Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to our welcome to our TED Talk class. And today we have a hot topic, I believe. It's about renewable energy and nuclear energy, I guess. And Vasans guessed that the reason why I choose this topic is because of this modern and popular series about Chernobyl, but it was not. But it it provoked us to discuss, incidents in nuclear field in our pre-show. So please connect early, and you will able to participate in our pre-show. So we were warming up, and let's speak a bit about major nuclear incidents. So we had like three, right? Nuclear incidents: 3 Mile Island, Pennsylvania, Chernobyl, and Fukushima. Fukushima. I don't know how to pronounce. Yeah. So teach us how it changed the overall industry, all these incidents.
With 3 Mile Island, which we call TMI-2, it was 3 Mile Island. They've got 4 units, 4 reactors. Unit 2 is where the disaster happened. So we call it TMI-2, TMI Unit 2. That happened in 1979, which is a long time ago, really, 50 years. And when it happened, it was the first nuclear disaster in the world. It was like everyone was, oh my God, the world's doomed. We're all going to die. You know, the rumors and the wild imagining stories people were telling, we're going to have fissures, crevices in the ground spread out in every direction for miles with radioactive steam coming up into the air, and people were scared to death. And nothing happened. It was all inside of one building, and it never got out. But the terror, the psychological terror of that event and all of the wild rumors terrified people about nuclear power. So when TMI happened, we have not yet, since 1979, built one new nuclear plant in this country in 50 years.
Wow.
We've got one under construction right now that maybe will get finished. But that just killed our nuclear industry and made everyone anti-nuclear. And it was no event. It was all inside of our, what we call a containment building. Nothing got out. Its purpose is to contain everything inside there, and it did. So the parking lot at the plant was even safe. But the psychological impact of it was tremendous. Now, at that time, the event started with an equipment malfunction that the operatives knew about and ignored. Oh, it's leaking. That's leaking. Don't worry about it. Oh, yeah, we know about that. It's leaking. Well, we call that complacency. They saw a problem and they lived with it. So when something went wrong, they didn't see that it went wrong because that thing that was leaking was where they would have seen that it was going wrong. But they already had a bad indication. So when it happened, they didn't see this new symptom. So that's what happened, was their procedures were also very primitive. Our emergency procedures in 1979 were just terrible. They were like, no detail, no specifics, just respond to the problem and deal with it. It's like, what do I do? I've never seen this problem before. So back at that time when it happened, our procedures were poorly written. They weren't detailed. And we didn't even know what kind of accidents could happen in a nuclear plant. I mean, we didn't know. So we had no procedures for it because we'd never seen it before.
Exactly.
So after it happened, we said, wow, we never imagined that kind of a problem. So we completely rewrote all of our nuclear plant procedures to be more diagnostic. And our procedures became 2-part. One part was the accident is obvious. It's a loss of water. It's a loss of heat. It's a loss of power. and you go to that event-based procedure, and boom, 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 it tells you exactly what to do. But our nuclear regulatory agency, our federal authority said, well, what if you don't know what the accident is? What if it's like, what's going on? We don't know. So our emergency procedures had another part that assumed we didn't know what was going on. So even if we don't know what's happening, our emergency procedures can still keep the plant protected by looking at what we call the safety functions, which in physical terms is like, instead of knowing what the patient is sick with, we don't know what disease he's got, but he's dying. So if we keep his pulse, his heart beating, and if we keep his lungs breathing, and we keep his blood pressure high, if we can maintain those, I don't need to know the disease. I can keep the patient alive. So we completely changed the design of our emergency procedures based on that actual an unknown event, but at least keep the plant safe until we could figure out what the event was, and then we would deal with it. So after a while, we had better procedures. And then Chernobyl happened.
Yeah, I understand. I think it's ironically that I guess in Chernobyl we have like different situation. You know, the instruction was wrong. So operator, he like a guy in charge at that night. I don't know, guy on duty. He just followed the instruction, but it was incorrect, and it's led to disaster. I guess there are many like different stories inside. It's
what we were taught is your accident happened because your government wanted to do a test, and they had to find a plant that would block the safety systems to allow the test. And Chernobyl was the first plant that said, okay, we'll do your test, we'll block all the safety systems. Well, that turned out to be a bad decision, and they got and they lost control of the test and got an explosion and everything else.
Yeah, so guy on duty, he was prescribed to ignore, you know, this diagram. So they told him that it's okay, you know, we are going to make some tests, you will see some bad things, it's okay. So just ignore them, and he did so.
Now, Chernobyl had no effect on us really, because you got a different kind of design. You don't have the big containment building. Yours is kind of open to the air if something goes wrong. So you didn't affect our procedures much.
Yeah,
but then Fukushima came along.
Yep.
Now, what was bad about Fukushima was the whole plant went underwater, and they lost all power. Everything was soaking wet, and nothing worked. So our NRC over here is going, how do we protect against that? So we changed all our procedures again, assuming that nothing at the nuclear plant works. Nothing works. Suddenly our nuclear plant, everything just trips, it stops, there's no power, nothing works. Now how do we protect the plant? So we're going, oh my God, come on, you know? So 3 Mile Island and Fukushima have sent us through huge changes in our assumptions and our procedures, and have made a huge impact on the nuclear industry. So we are much, 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 much safer today than we were in 1979. No question, you know.
There are a lot of criticizing in Russian society and science about Fukushima. They think that there were many mistakes, and not only mistakes like of operator, like, you know, mistakes of the moment, but like what's the word for it? Like the whole project was wrong. You know, if you build underwater, you should expect wet or something.
Yeah.
Like this. Yeah, but let's ask our guys. Guys, what do you know about this incidents? What do you learn in schools or somewhere? What is it? Is people of your society, are people of your society aware of this incident? Do they discuss this nuclear things? Gerard, what about you?
Yes, in Spain, at the beginning of the 80s, people started to say, no, nuclear energy is bad, with the symbol of a sun, smiling and saying nuclear, no, thank you, in Spanish.
But you had a station, right? A nuclear station.
Okay, yeah, we have some nuclear station in Spain, and we had some accidents, but minor accidents compared with these ones. Those ones.
I learned that in Andalusia there was one plant, and people were strongly against it, so they prefer to pay more for electricity than start a nuclear station again. Basans, what do you know about nuclear energetic in general?
Yeah, exactly 8 years ago, there was an initiative in my state to open a nuclear plant. People started to oppose it, and everybody seemed to discuss about the pros and cons of nuclear plant at that time. And I learned that it's cost effective than other methods, and a single atom can produce a lot of energy in this case. So on this point, it's a good thing, but the wastage management was the question of the protesters. How are you going to hide the waste? Are you going to dump the waste in oceans? Because all the nuclear plants were built at the seashore. So that made them question about the environmental, the ecology or something like that. So if you spoil the ocean, it will affect human very soon.
But for some, it's too late. Fukushima already spoils the ocean every day. So they did not cover it. It's still pollute our ocean. Gerard, please.
I wanted to ask to Teacher Lee, what amount of waste creates a nuclear power plant in a year, more or less?
Not a lot, really. Most of the waste comes from the exhausted uranium. The entire reactor core is about a 12-foot tall cylinder. So it's about 12 feet tall, I'm sorry, 12 feet wide. It's been so long now, but it's not that big. Every year we replace 1/3. Yeah. So the size of it's not that much waste, really.
It's not impressive, right? So I know a bit about this because Rosatom, it's a company in Russia who provide nuclear energy. They have two businesses actually. First one is to build nuclear stations, and another one is to get this wasted for recycle. So we are getting this waste from the whole Europe, from Australia, from China. So it's a prosper business. And I have seen the report about this, this thing, because people are worried. They ask, wow, they giving us waste, radioactive waste, so it can be dangerous or something. So Rosatom made a movie, documental movie about that. And the waste from the whole world, what Rosatom gets, it's not that big. It's one train can move this.
Yeah.
So I was impressed that it's it's a small amount. Yeah.
It's compact, yeah.
Compact, right.
And what we actually have processes in America where we glassify it. We actually take liquid waste or dust or something, and we can actually compact it and kind of liquefy it and harden it where it's like glass. So it can't get loose and run into the ground because we make it solid. And so it's just stored in barrels as solid waste.
Yep.
So it's not as dangerous as a lot of people think, where if you have a leak, it's going to run all over the place. It's not that kind of waste. We solidify it where it can't do that.
Probably later we will throw them to the space, right? When Musk will build his...
When it becomes cheaper, yeah. We'll shoot it into the sun and keep our sun living longer.
don't. Gerard, please.
And regarding the TED Talk, the oil burns a lot, make a lot of fumes, and those fumes kill billions of people, and people are not aware of that. They think about the waste, nuclear power waste. How many people has killed nuclear power waste that is contained in tunnels?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I speaking of victims of nuclear, I don't know exact numbers. I don't know. I never studied that, but I think it's kind of like thousands probably in Chernobyl. So it was a disaster. But the main victims there, it's firefighters who arrived to the station at the first moment to try to help something, and then we have like people with a special profession. We call them liquidators or something. They made a, how we call it, sarcophag. I don't know. Is it
Sarcophagus?
Sarcophagus. Yeah, and actually this sarcophagus.
Sarcophagus.
Yeah, this sarcophagus, it will be broken in 2060, and then they will try to recycle the rest. So it's a still ongoing project. You see, concrete blocks. Yeah, but speaking of TED Talk, let's. Oh, Tishley, please.
No, go ahead.
Speaking of TED Talk, let's go back to TED Talks and retell the gist. Gerard, could you start, please? What is about?
No, it's quite easy.
Yeah, please.
It's quite easy. So the guy was a former believer in renewable energies, and he realized that they have some drawbacks. Like, for instance, you want to make a farm of solar panels, you need a lot of space, you need to kill a lot of animals, and they can burn birds, and the energy is not continuous, only produces energy sometime, and the cost is twice as nuclear power, and many drawbacks. And the same with windmills. Kill a lot of birds that in danger of being extinct. So at the end, the speaker thinks that nuclear power is much better. As we think, we already know that, but it's good to see in a TED Talk, because the talk are supposed made from the liberal point of view.
Yeah, but I have a question for you guys. Why do you think that this guy was initially a believer to renewable energy? What makes him to be such a believer? Losans, what do you think? Why?
I don't know, but his shirt made me curious, because he wore the Marie Curie's image on his T-shirt, and I was like, okay, he must be some scientist or something. That's why he's supporting nuclear energy. I thought like that.
Yeah, I see. Gerard, what do you think? Why?
Yes, he was worried about global warming, which I think it's a fact that we have this problem. And sun, solar energy and wind energy looks like clean. The easy point of view, the easy way to see. Okay, that looks very clean.
Yeah, exactly. And the guy was from California. It's a hotbed of such guys here. I guess, but I think it's interesting, because we, like humans, we are emotional. We are not too logic. So we think, this sunshine, this wine, it's so beautiful. It cannot be, bad. I guess. And on the other hand, we have, nuclear, all these things, disasters, some non-understandable things. So we are against, like, bias it already. Wasan, please.
Yes, and some people has to teach the public and everybody about the new technology that are being introduced. How to say that? Forget about the coal mining, the oil industry, or any other. They can witness at least at some distance. But a nuclear uh, source of energy, they cannot go closer to that in the place where they
Yeah, it's called
the,
reactor,
yeah,
right?
the reactor. So they cannot see, they cannot witness. So somebody has to tell, and somebody has to derive the facts and the pros to make the people understand. So I think this guy did a very good job.
Yeah, I see. So teacher Lee wrote in our chat that nuclear power doesn't advertise much. Yeah? I don't know why. In Russia, nuclear energy is something good. It's considered like something good. And if you are a physicist, physician, how we call it,
Physicist, yeah.
physicist, and you work with nuclear, you will be a good guy. So we have a lot of universities that graduate and teach such a students. So it's a nice thing.
So you don't need to advertise. But see, in America, it's evil. It's considered evil, and we don't advertise. We don't say it's clean, it's safe. We don't. I don't know why. It's stupid. We need to.
Yeah.
But cigarettes advertise, liquor and alcohol advertise. Even marijuana is advertising now. It's crazy.
And nuclear energy, which can save us literally from,
Yeah.
like a humankind, it's something bad. Exactly. Yeah. Vasant, please.
Yes, talking about the nuclear fission, what is the source of, the raw material? Where they consume the uranium from? I think as of now, we are consuming uranium from Australia, I think. I don't know about the other source of energy, uranium in the world. So I think that made them reluctant, hesitant about making nuclear reactor.
Okay, I finished my university too long, so too far away, so I can forget something. But as far as I remember, it's almost always uranium, right? It has like different forms, isotopes. How we call it?
Isotopes.
Isotopes. Yes, it can be like what? It can have different amount of electrons. Am I right, teacher Lee? This forms of uranium.
Different numbers of neutrons.
Neutrons, okay. So it can be heavy and semi-heavy and light, right?
Yeah, different weights. Yeah.
Different weights, yeah. It's interesting, but I learned that uranium, it's not something rare for our Earth. It's like everywhere, but not every uranium it's eligible for nuclear station. And the most of it, I guess, in Australia.
South Africa's got a lot. I forget. There's like 3 countries that produce most of it, but it's mined from the earth, just like gold or silver or coal. We dig it out. Yeah.
As far as I know, we have own mines in Russia, so for us it's very natural, like closed business. We don't have to buy it from anywhere. We have it. Yeah. But okay, it's a nice word, enrich, right? So you cannot use it just from the yours. You have to make
filter it out and collect it.
Yeah. Make some procedures, right?
Yeah.
Cannot they invite? Who? Vasant, who invite?
I mean, just like the oil power, they're making fabricating fake fake allegations.
I see.
I
see. You're asking about how precious this uranium, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess nuclear stations, they don't consume much, right? When I was in university, I was told that a small box, it's used for a month or something. Actually, am I right?
Yeah, it doesn't take much, but uranium is not considered a precious metal. It's not like gold or silver or platinum, that people use for jewelry and showing off. It's not, you can't make a lot of money on uranium. Only nuclear plants use it. No one else cares. It's radioactive.
Exactly.
No one wants it but nuclear plants.
Yeah, and
Marie Curie.
yeah, and speaking about submarines, yeah, they use the same like technology, but kind of different because they have to be compact, right? And that's why they have enriched uranium, right?
Yep.
Well, what do you think? Will we have this in our cars eventually?
I don't think so. Not in the U.S. because in the U.S. we have a federal organization called the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC, and they control radioactive materials in our whole country. And they do not want radioactive material everywhere because terrorists can collect it from legal sources, enrich it, and make nuclear bombs. So the NRC closely monitors who can even have a little bit of radioactive material. Only like X-ray, only like hospitals might need a little bit of radium to inject into your blood so they can see things moving through your body. So only very few fields are allowed to have any nuclear material at all.
Okay.
So we control it. So we're not going to have it in every car all over the country. It's never going to happen here.
Okay. Now I understand. A popular joke in the American series and sitcoms. They always joke like, "I tried to make a small nuclear reactor in my garage, and I got FBI agents or something."
Yep, not allowed. Can't even own it.
Vasant, please.
Yes, I don't think that we will have uranium in our cars or in any other everyday life because as of now we are having oil as a fuel, and we know if something bad happens, if an explosion happens, we know that if a car burns, we would not go near to it because we can see the thing, we can witness that. But uranium is not like that. Radiation is not like that. You cannot witness it, and it will still affect if you are if you go nearby that place. So it's hazardous.
Yeah, I see your point. Let's return back to it a few moments. In a few moments, Gerard, please.
Yes, a question for you. In many movies we can see that some terrorists got nuclear weapons from the old USSR, because of transition time. And I'm surprised that any terrorists had those weapons because it looked like they could have them, But in reality, it doesn't look like they did. Anyway, what happened with those? Did you think you lost some of them, or what happened?
Well, I'm not in charge, I don't have no information from Putin yet about this. But what I know that all nuclear stations on Russian territory, they are like special buildings with a special security. You cannot go there just because you want. And actually, I don't think that some terrorists can attack it easily because they're really like protected, So it's I would not believe that someone can can steal something from them. So it does not look plausible to me. Vasant?
Yeah, there is a movie I watched that said it was how to say that it was based on the true events, and how terrorists used the metal called cesium metal. It's also radioactive, and they use that material to make bombs, and they have separate crew, just like suicide squads. They dedicate their lives to make bombs with that cesium with bare hands without any protection. They does that, and they live in a hell for the rest of their life. It's an unexplored truth.
Yeah, I see. Well, I don't know much about about these things about security, but what about America? It should be high security object as well, right?
Yes, nuclear plants typically will have first a guard post to even enter the property.
Mhm.
You've got to show ID and have a reason to be there. When you enter the buildings, before you enter the important area, there'll be like a 10-foot high fence with barbed wire. And then you'll have about 20 feet of flat ground with gravel, with rocks. And you'll have another fence 10 feet high with barbed wire. In between there is called the isolation zone. No person is allowed to be between those fences. If you're between those fences, you're a terrorist invader and you're going to be shot, okay? We have guard posts, guard towers with people up there that can look out, and they've got rifles. We've got security guards with machine guns, assault rifles, automatic rifles. To enter the plant, you've got to have your handprint registered, and you've got to have a machine electronically read your handprint. You've got to have a security badge that can be scanned. You've got to go through a metal detector and x-ray machine, just like in the airport. You got to go through and you got to go through turnstiles that let one person pass at a time. All the doors are locked, and you got to have your security card to get through every door. It's very high security. And there might be, we don't even know how many security guards are at a nuclear plant. There might be 10, there might be 20, but there's more than one guy. We've got a small army of security guards ready to repel, a group of terrorists.
Yeah.
So they're very high security.
Yeah, exactly. I have the same impression. Usually we have some military bases around, nuclear stations. So I guess it's for that reason. You can call them.
Another thing that's interesting is to work at a nuclear plant, you've got to take drug tests. They check your blood, your urine to make sure there's no marijuana, no drugs at all. Any drug usage, you can't work in a nuclear plant. They have us take a psychological test that a psychiatrist looks at our answers. So we have to be basically certified sane. So we're the only people in America certified sane. We have to have a background check. We have to give them our addresses, where we've lived, where we've worked, people we knew at each of those locations. We've got to cover our entire lifetime in writing and give that to people. And they look at those addresses, they call those people, and they say, and each person they call, they ask that person if they know two people that know me. So it spreads out in a binary tree, and they spend thousands of dollars just to make sure that we're not a criminal. So the cost and expense they go to try to keep nuts and terrorists out of a nuclear plant are just unbelievable.
Yep, exactly. Well, but it's still a good plot for movie, right?
And still they get in.
Yeah. But let's go back to another Vasan's point about that radiation is invisible. It's undetectable on our personal level. So that's why it can scare people. It can scare anyone because you just don't know if you exposed to that. And I found that it's an interesting point. Well, yeah, and I think speaking of Chernobyl, for instance, it was USSR time, and the first thing what they tried to do is they tried to make a secret from this incident. Why? Because it was like a politics at that time. They tried to secret everything bad. It was a time of good news. You can see only good news, not bad news. And I think some people suffered from that. Some people, Chernobyl. So some people, if they knew, they would escape more quickly. But they just did not know about that. So it was a crime, I guess, not to let people know immediately about the incident. On the other hand, it could provoke panic and we know that panic it's another bad thing as well. Yeah.
Another thing that came out of our 3 Mile Island event was our nuclear plants are privately owned. So when they had this accident at the nuclear plant, they didn't tell anybody. They said, oh my God, so they kept it on the plant. So later when rumors got out, somebody called their wife and their wife called a newspaper reporter. Suddenly the news people are going to the governor saying, what's happening about this nuclear accident? And the governor goes, huh? What are you talking about? There's no problem. So he found out from rumor. So then he called the plant, and the plant says, oh, no, everything's okay. It's under control. No problem. So then he goes to the newspapers. Don't worry, folks. Everything's under control. No problem. Well, they lied to him. So now when there's a nuclear event, we have to call the government within 15 minutes and give them an update every 15 minutes. So by law now, we have to call them quick and update them often. And we have the NRC, our nuclear police. They have 2 people that work at every nuclear site. So every nuclear site has 2 federal regulators working on site. So when something happens, they have a representative right there immediately.
Okay.
So it's tremendous.
Okay. So we will know just if it will happen, right?
Yeah. The NRC will know immediately. Some things we have to tell them in 5 minutes.
Hassan, please.
Yes, I think hiding the bad news is a pretty good idea, because if you tell the truth, it will definitely stop the process abruptly. So hiding the news, I think almost every nuclear plant in my country is built with the help of Russian government, I think. So we have the Russian collaboration, and it's a pretty good idea, because you don't have to. You can settle down your own people, and you can give the the formula to your friend, and you can peep out from time to time. Okay, he's doing good, so we can execute the plan in our country, something like that. So it's a good idea.
Yeah. It's this collaboration. It's happened now, like I think everywhere in the world, with Egypt, with the Middle East, with many things. So Rosatom has like a program. They build you a nuclear station for free. You just got it, but you will pay after for maintenance.
Wow.
Yeah. So we build a lot of them in Asia, in Africa, everywhere. So it's like a good business, I guess.
They're about $6 billion to build one a long time ago. Now probably 10 billion. I can't believe they do it for free.
Well, they do, but they charge you for maintenance, and you cannot say no. It's enough.
Okay. Now, when we talk about reporting to the government, this may embarrass Ivan a little bit, but I don't think he cares. Back when Chernobyl happened, this was USSR days. When Chernobyl happened and radioactive stuff was going into the air and it was going around the world in the atmosphere. And so Russia never said anything happened. And then Sweden had the milk was showing up radioactive. How they found that out, I don't know, but they said, gee, our milk is radioactive from our cows. Gee, our grass the cows are eating is radioactive. Where's all this radioactivity coming from on the ground? And then they tracked the wind currents and they called Russia. Said, Russia, USSR, you got a problem over there? No, we ain't got no problem. So for days, the rest of the world's going, where's all this radioactivity coming from? Russia, USSR, you got a problem? No. So finally, after about a week, the USSR said, okay, we got a problem. We need help.
But I mentioned that. I said that it was like a crime not to let people know. I don't know why this solution was implemented, but I think it just was a politics of that at that time. It was, how we call this, a solution by default, because no one wanted to be responsible. They just, let us boss, and then boss say, okay, let's try to hide it, So it was impossible, but who knows? what a president will understand that. So yeah, it was not a good thing. But actually the three countries that suffers a lot from Chernobyl was Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. So other countries, they had what we call like secondary track or something. So they was not exposed too much to that. But of course it was registered. So it's obvious, yeah. And nowadays Chernobyl bother us a lot, in what terms? In terms that now it's on the area, on the territory of Ukraine, and by law, Ukraine is in charge for maintaining Chernobyl. But we we are not sure that it will be done in a good way. So we trying to negotiate with them to make some work there for free, but it's impossible because of politics, as always,
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Now, something about Japan, the Japanese culture, if you know about Asians, Japanese and Chinese don't like to be embarrassed. They call their public face. So they have to save face. They have to avoid embarrassment at all costs. So in Japan, the culture was you never admitted any problem, because that made you look bad and caused embarrassment to your company. So Japanese culture, when Fukushima happened, had a culture of everyone lying to everyone. Employees lied to the bosses lied to the government, everybody lied to everybody, because you had to save your face and not admit any problems existed that you couldn't manage. So when Fukushima happened, the communications was very bad because nobody would admit something was wrong, just like TMI. Everything's okay, no problem. Yeah, we got a little problem, but it's under control. So Japan got in a lot of trouble for that. That accident was worse because people were keeping secrets and weren't communicating freely and openly. So.
And what I read, that they lost precious time. The impact could be less if they if they react accordingly. Yeah. So
So I think their culture has changed a little bit, at least in the nuclear industry, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, but there are many interesting things that show our characters in the catastrophes. For instance, what I read about this Fukushima problem. Some people they need some at that time they needed some people to make some job in a radioactive region. So they have to find volunteers who much likely will get some disease from that. So what in Russia it's we had the same problem, but in Russia it's solved very easy. Yeah, who is a volunteer? I am. Let's go. Yeah, we don't care. People go there. Young people go there. It's very easy. But in Japan they used like very old people for them. People with 70 years old and so on. So people who volunteered, they said, I'm old enough. I can go there and save someone's life. And I found that it's something good. It's something that we can get like an example of behavior.
Also, it turns out there's a reason for that. Radiation harms your body cells. So if you're young, your body cells reproduce quickly. So a damaged cell reproduces another damaged cell, and your body is more damaged by radiation if you're younger. If you're old and your body cells don't change much, then when they're damaged, the damage doesn't replicate itself over and over and over because you're old and your body's metabolism is less. So old people actually are harmed less than young people. So usually when we ask for volunteers, it's usually older people first because they've got a better chance of surviving. Yeah. And then we ask for single people, of course, because families, But as Ivan said, anybody can volunteer.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's interesting because in Russia we have like different culture. If something is dangerous, if something is bad, we will send the youngest one.
Invincible. I'm not afraid.
Yeah. And it's not just we send; they will volunteer because they like raised in this culture. They will say, "No, no way, my father, you will go there. Let me do that." Something like
Yeah,
this.
yeah. So it depends. Yeah.
Yeah, but for us, for our culture, Japanese, they are from different planet. Whatever news we have from Japan, we think, wow, how it's possible? It's totally totally reversed logic, I would say.
Yeah, and one of the reasons when we back in World War II, when we had our draft, or after World War II, we always drafted 18-year-old kids. We never drafted adults because the 18-year-old minds are malleable. They're easy to brainwash, if you will. They're easy to obey orders, and they think they just are invincible. They think I'm young, I'm energetic, I'm fast. They can't beat me, and their mindset is just what the military wants, so they can shape it and send them into battle to be killed.
Yeah.
So it's a shame.
They are easy to indoctrinate, right? They have the eager for some stars. I have a star. I have like a new rank. Yeah. let me die for that. Let me die for that small medal. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. We had this. I read some book about World War II, and they say that usually the job of pilot in military, it's a very hard job with a very small chances to survive. So they did not like manage to find a lot of enough pilots. So they started a company. How it's good to be pilot. You are so brave. All the girls look for you, and they found a lot of young stupid men for that. Teacher, you told once me an idiom about pilots: bold or bold.
Yeah. World War II. There are old pilots and there are bold pilots,
Yeah, exactly.
but there are no old bold pilots.
Exactly. Yeah, I forgot about it, and I saw that it's bald, like without hair.
Oh, bald.
Yeah. Okay, what we missed about this renewable energy? So, do you think that we should not use solars at all? What do you think, Gert? Should we use solar, batteries at some point?
But I think in some houses that in isolated places, it's good having solar panels because you have to build a grid. It's very expensive. It's not worth.
Yep. So for some reasons, it's good. We have a lot of traffic lights with solar panels. Why? We don't have lack of electricity, but it's just convenient, right?
Well, sometimes we lose electricity.
Yep.
And the lights don't work. So having solar powered lights, they might still work and provide some safety.
Yep, exactly.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
Like a backup source, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Vasant, please.
Yes, I think we should diversify our source of energy in all possible sources because anything can happen, just like the tsunami or something like that. And so it's good to have all the sources in equal equal parts. Just like investing your money, splitting your money and investing in different shares. So you're reducing the risk. So I think that's a pretty good idea because solar panels also is emitting heat, so it contributes to the global warming. So we should have a certain amount of solar, a certain amount of wind, certain amount of tide energy, so something like that.
Yeah, but do you remember speaker mentioned that in the TED talk? He said that Germany lost their money because they tried to hedging these risks. They used that and that and this. But France, it was like focused on nuclear energy, and then just spent less money, half of the money as that Germany did. So yes, I understand.
Yeah.
Actually, am I right that it's a hedging the risk, right? When you
Yeah, I said in England. I mean, diversity in energy, not England, energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's called hedging your bets.
Yeah, we say in Russian, don't put all your eggs in one
Basket.
Yep, exactly. So but the sun's never going to go away. The wind's never going to go away. Nuclear, someday we might use up all the uranium in the world, but we don't right now foresee that. So there's really no reason to have a lot of diversity because we don't expect the energy source to go away.
Yep.
But like oil or gas, if you think the oil's going to get used up, you better start moving away from oil or you're going to run out of oil someday and have no power,
Yeah.
So it depends on the sources, how much diversity you need.
Vasant, please.
Yeah, have you ever heard about the tidal energy? Is that popular?
Yeah, you mean this, using of waves, tidal.
Yeah, using waves. Yeah.
From ocean or something. Well, as far as I know, we don't have this in Russia. Probably we had one in Crimea, I guess. I read about that when I was young, but I'm not sure that we still have them. Yeah. Actually, do you?
I don't know of anything that uses ocean waves as energy. If we could do it, ocean waves are the closest thing we have to perpetual motion.
Yeah.
If we could harness the motion of the ocean waves and make electricity, that would be fantastic. As long as we've got a moon, we're going to have ocean tides.
Yeah. As far as I know, it was not very efficient. That was the reason why we don't use it. It was like an experiment, and then we said no, thank you.
Yeah, probably. So the problem might be capacity. It just can't produce enough energy to power a city or something. So
there are many reasons. You have to transfer your energy, right? And it's wet, and it's salty water, and it's corruption, and it's a hard task, to maintain.
Yeah.
Vasant, please.
And also considering the global warming, the sea level rising and decreasing and increasing, so it might also affect the energy producing.
Yeah, but let me tell you, another. In Russia, we have another source of energy. We call it hydroelectric powers, and it's built on the river. So when river, water in the river, stream in the river goes, it's just spin something, and we have energy. But what is interesting is that during the night or somewhere when we have spare electricity, we start the turbine backward, and we push water back to the upside, just to accumulate energy. Yeah, so we have a big reservoir somewhere in the mountains, and we accumulate water in this way.
Yeah, we call, if it's water powered, we say hydroelectric.
Okay, hydroelectric. Yeah.
So rivers, and dams, and then geothermal. There's actually lava underground, and if you can get a crack in the earth where steam comes out, you can build a plant over that and use the heat of underground steam, and we call that geothermal energy from the earth.
Yeah. Yes, there are a lot of sources, as we can see. Yeah. But when you're in Spain, you want to use something like solar, because of this sunshine. I have seen many hotels. They have these black tubes, black barrels as a source for hot water. So on the roof, okay. They have a lot of black barrels, and they use that to to what? Yeah.
In my campground, we have one toilet rebuilding with solar panels to heat the water. And it's quite effective because it's used in the summer, so people don't use the water with the normal temperature. They want the water a little bit hotter. So it's quite effective. And before that, we tried geothermal, but it didn't work. The guy that said, but actually, you know, my daughter deal with this company, and they were, you know, like saying a lot. Oh, that's very good, but it didn't work. And besides, the installation was very bad, so it was a disaster.
Yeah. Speaking about conman, you know, there are many in renewable sources. They promise you a lot. You know, in Russia we have a problem with the climate. We have to heat our houses for long, like period of time, for 9 months actually. So some people make like geothermal sources for heating. So they just drill the core for huge amount, like, you know, more than 100 meters. And then they put somewhere some like tube, some conduit here to make it hot from ground. Well, it works. But the overall money, what you spend to drilling and all the things, you can, you know, you can buy wood for 45 years for that.
Yeah. Yeah, we say it's not cost effective.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, it's a scam for now.
Because usually geothermal, you can't make geothermal. You have to be someplace where the ground has a crack and steam is coming out. You can't drill and make that happen. So,
well, teacher, what I learned, if you drill enough, you will find some, you know, like hot.
Really?
So, yeah. So, but after you need to make some circulation. You know, you need a compressor that makes water circulate and then, you know, bring you hot. So so it's not like once drill and then hot forever. No, you have to circulation system, all those things. So it's not exactly free.
Yeah, expensive.
Okay, I think we covered the topic. I think unfortunately we don't have, you know, any opponent for us, a guy who hates nuclear energy. Maybe next time. So thank you very much, and I think it's all for today. Bye.